So picture this. It's probably around 11:30 at night. You're sitting in your car after grabbing a movie ticket when two kids knock on your window. They look normal until they raise their heads. Their eyes are completely black. And one of them says, "Can we come in?" So, today we're going to talk about one of the most creepiest modern urban legends on the internet, the Black-Eyed Children. So, whether these children are demons or ghosts or aliens or whatever the fuck you want to call them, or is it just one of the biggest internet hoaxes ever created? I don't know. So it definitely makes you think twice before answering a knock at your door after dark, doesn't it? I mean, mm, I don't know. This is why I have a video doorbell so I can see who's at my door, so I don't have to go answer it. So welcome back to Tales from the Fairy. I'm Tanner, and today we're seeing what all this fuss is about.
Los niños caen y cantan siempre, mas líbranos del mal. Amén.
So I'll be honest here. If two kids are knocking at my car window at 11:30 p.m. asking for a ride, I would already be suspicious. But if they looked up and had completely black eyes, nope. Mm-mm. Hell to the no. I'd be setting a land speed record getting out of that fucking parking lot. I tell you that right now. Sorry, kids, you're gonna have to haunt someone else. So, where did this legend even come from? Well, believe it or not, unlike a lot of ghost stories that are hundreds of years old, this one has a surprisingly clear starting point. We can trace almost all these stories back to one single man. His name is Brian Bethel, and in 1996, he was a journalist living in Abilene, Texas. So one night, he pulled into the parking lot of a movie theater. It was late, and he was sitting in his car writing out a check to pay his internet bill. Yeah, this was the 90s, so people still wrote checks. Wild times. Wild. So everything seemed completely normal, right? And then two boys were standing outside his driver's side window. Brian said they looked to be around 10 to 14 years old, at least. He said they weren't covered in blood and they weren't dressed like ghosts. At first glance, they looked completely ordinary. One of the boys spoke calmly, he said. And he said something like, "Hey, mister, we missed our movie. Can you give us a ride home so we can get money from our mom? We'll come right back." Honestly, that's not the weirdest request in the world. It seems pretty normal for the time, but it's also late. Like we said, he said it's around 11:30 p.m. So Brian immediately felt something was off, which always listen to your gut, people. Always do that. And you know that feeling you get when your brain is screaming, this isn't right, but you can't explain it? That is exactly how he described it. He couldn't put his finger on this, and the boys weren't threatening him. They weren't yelling, and they weren't acting aggressive. But every instinct he had was telling him to not unlock the door. The older boy kept talking. He reassured Brian over and over, "We're just two little kids. We can't come in unless you let us. We won't hurt you." Now, that's strange to say, isn't it? Like, mm, mm. So, anyways, nobody accused them of wanting to hurt anyone, yet they kept insisting they were harmless. And then Brian finally looked directly into their faces. That's when he saw their eyes. Completely black, no white, no iris, no pupil, just solid black. He said every hair felt like it stood right up, so his survival instincts kicked in naturally. Without saying another word, he threw his car into gear and sped out of the parking lot, which I told you I would have done the same thing. Like, fuck that. Mm-mm. And as he drove away, he said he looked back in the mirror, and the boys were gone. Just gone. Not chasing after him or waving. No explanation. They simply disappeared into the night. Brian later wrote about the encounter online, never expecting much to come from it. Instead, thousands of people started reaching out saying they had experienced almost the same exact thing. Different towns, different years, different people. But the details, they were eerily similar. And that's when the legend of the Black-Eyed Children exploded across the internet. So no matter who's telling the story, there's a few details that are always showing up. The children usually appear at night. They're polite, almost unnaturally polite, which, some kids these days, not all, I'm not saying all, but some kids these days, they are little demons. Tell you. Okay, anyways. And they ask for help, whether it's a ride or to use your phone or to come inside. But here's the weirdest part. They never just walk in, they always ask for permission. So, after Brian's story made its way online, people started comparing notes, as they typically would. And that's when something interesting happened. A pattern started to emerge. Most reports describe children between the ages of about 6 and 16. Sometimes it's one child, but it's usually two. They're almost always dressed in plain clothes. Nothing flashy or nothing that immediately screams this is paranormal. It's their behavior that catches people off guard. They're incredibly calm, almost too calm. They speak clearly, they don't raise their voices, and they seem laser focused on getting one thing. And that's your permission. Whether it's to get into your car or step into your house or borrow your phone, they almost never demand it. They just ask. And if they're told no, many stories claim they don't become angry. Instead, they just keep asking. Another detail that pops up a lot is that witnesses say the children don't seem to understand normal social behavior. Conversations can feel awkward and almost rehearsed, as if they're trying to imitate how people talk but don't quite get it right. So that's. Is it paranormal Or is it more like UFOs? Mm, Let's continue. Then there's the physical appearance. Most people don't notice anything unusual at first. It's only after a few moments that they realize something is completely off. Then they see their eyes. They're completely black, no whites, no color, just black. Whether this is a trick of the light or false memory or something far stranger, that's what has made these stories stick with people for nearly 30 years now. Because once you hear about the black eyed children, it's kind of hard to forget them. So let's look at a few of the encounters that people claim actually happened. Now, before we do, I want to be clear about something. None of these have ever been proven. They're stories shared by the people who say they experienced them. Whether you believe them is completely up to you. But I'll admit, some of these are pretty creepy. And like going around on Reddit and stuff and seeing like the same details come up again and again. It's creepy. Okay, so one of the most talked about reports came from a woman who said she was home alone one rainy evening. She heard a knock at the door. Not pounding, not frantic, just 3 slow knocks. When she looked through the peephole, she saw 2 children standing on her porch, a boy and a younger girl. They had their heads lowered, so she couldn't really see their faces. She cracked the door just enough to ask if they needed something. The boy politely asked if they could come inside while they waited for their parents. He said they were cold. Okay, so this is already a tough situation. Like, I'd be like, well, yeah, of course. But, okay. So they're just regular kids. You don't want to slam the door in their faces, obviously, because, well, that's rude. But she said every instinct in her body was telling her not to open that door any farther. She apologized and said she couldn't let strangers inside. That's when the children slowly looked up. Both of them had completely black eyes. She said her heart immediately started racing, which, I mean, mine would too. I'd probably shit a brick right there. Honestly, if we're gonna be real about it, yeah, I'd shit a brick and slam my door. She shut and locked the door. A few seconds later, the same slow, steady rhythm. The boy calmly said, "Please let us in." No yelling, no anger, just the same calm voice. She refused again. Eventually, the knocking stopped. When she finally worked up the courage to look outside, the porch was empty. There is no footprints, no children, nothing. Now, could that story have been made up? Yeah, absolutely. But it's the kind of story that's stuck around because it taps into something almost everyone has felt at one point, that feeling that something isn't right, even if you can't explain why. Here's another one. Okay, so a man claimed he was sitting in his parked car outside a convenience store late one night when someone tapped on his passenger side window. He turned, and there was a young boy. The child asked for a ride home. Simple enough. But the man noticed the kid never smiled, never fidgeted. He just stood there, staring. The man said he reached over to unlock the passenger door. Then something made him stop. He looked up. That's when he saw the boy's eyes, completely black. He immediately locked the doors again and drove away. As he pulled out of the parking lot, he glanced in his rearview mirror. The boy was still standing exactly where he'd been. Not chasing the car, not waving, just watching. So, whether these stories are true or whether they're exaggerated, or whether they're pure internet folklore, one thing is certain. They've kept people checking the peephole twice before answering the door. So, if these stories aren't real, why do so many people remember them? And if they are, what exactly are people seeing? Okay. So let's just say for a second that these encounters have really happened. Okay. So yeah, what are these people seeing exactly? That's our $1 million question today. And honestly, nobody knows. So over the years, people have come up with all kinds of theories, like some are rooted in folklore, some lean into science fiction, and others are based on psychology. Let's start with probably the most popular one. Theory 1 is demons. So most people are believing that these black-eyed children aren't children at all, and I'm not believing they are children either. They just look like children, right? So, according to this theory, they're demonic entities pretending to be innocent because, let's face it, who expects evil to show up looking like a scared 10-year-old? I mean, it's kind of smart in a way. Yeah. One thing believers point to is the way these kids supposedly ask for permission before entering a home or a car. In many religious traditions and pieces of folklore, evil isn't always portrayed as forcing its way in. Instead, it tempts, persuades, or waits to be invited. Mm. A lot of people are believing this is what's exactly that's happening here. Now, whether you believe that is a whole nother story. But I will say, if a creepy kid starts politely negotiating with me to come inside, it's gonna be a hard fucking no. Sorry, but after reading all this, like, no. And it's late at night, hell no. Nope, nope. So let's talk about theory number 2 now, which this one's kind of fun. I like this one. And that is vampires. Some people have noticed that the whole asking for permission thing sounds a lot like old vampire legends. Okay, all right. So it says here in traditional folklore, vampires can't simply walk into someone's home. They have to be invited. Really? I never knew that until I'm reading it here on this website. Huh. Okay. So, could the Black-Eyed Children be some modern version of that myth? Uh, Maybe, perhaps, but probably not. But it's interesting how similar the stories are. Although, if vampires have downgraded from castles to knocking on my front door, times must be tough for them as well. Like, ugh, God, it's tough out here, guys. Theory number 3 is, drumroll please, aliens. Yep, we are going there. Some people think these aren't supernatural beings at all. They think they're extraterrestrials, trying and failing to blend in with humans. And I watched an alien movie recently, and it was good, and it creeped me out. I loved it, so I love this theory. So this could explain the awkward conversations, the emotionless expressions, and the strange way witnesses describe them speaking. Almost like they're acting out what they think a normal child would say. And I'll be honest here, if aliens have crossed the universe just to ask me for a ride, I've got some serious questions for them. Okay, so let's get into theory number 4. They are interdimensional beings. Okay, all right. So this theory has become more popular over the last several years. Instead of ghosts or aliens, some people think these children are beings from another reality, something that occasionally slips into our world. It's definitely one of the stranger ideas, but when you're already talking about kids with completely black eyes, I guess we're way past normal anyway. And last but not least is theory number 5, which it's all an urban legend. So let's come back down to earth for a second. The simplest explanation is that none of this is paranormal. Brian Bethel shared a creepy experience. People read it, other stories followed. So over time, details got repeated and embellished and eventually became part of the legend. That's kind of how urban legends work. Someone tells a good story, someone else adds a detail, another person swears it happened to their cousin, and before you know it, you've got a legend that spreads all over the world. And honestly, that explanation makes a lot of sense too. But here's the thing. If every single Black Eyed Children story is fictional, they still make people uncomfortable because they take something we're naturally wired to trust, a child asking for help, and twist it into something utterly terrifying. And I think that's why this legend has survived for almost 30 years now. Not because we know it's real, but because deep down, there's that tiny voice in the back of your mind asking, what if one night someone really does knock? Alright, so we've talked about the creepy stories and the theories and all the supernatural possibilities, right? But let's flip the script for a minute, because not everyone believes black eyed children are paranormal. In fact, most skeptics think there is a much simpler explanation. And honestly, some of their arguments are pretty solid, so let's hear them. For starters, there's the timing. The Black Eyed Children legend didn't come from centuries old folklore. It didn't come from an ancient manuscript or a forgotten legend passed down through generations. It really took off in the late 1990s, right as internet forums and online message boards were becoming popular. Back then, people were sharing ghost stories online the same way people share creepy TikToks today. One person posts a strange experience, someone else says, "That happened to me too." Another person adds another detail, and before long, the story grows a life of its own. Skeptics say that's exactly what happened here. Then there's the memory. Our memories aren't like video recordings. Every time we remember something, our brains can unintentionally change little pieces of it. If you've already heard stories about black eyes, strange kids, and late night encounters, it's possible your brain starts filling in those details when you think back on a creepy experience. That's called false memory, and it's something psychologists have studied for years. Another explanation is something called confirmation bias, which we talked about this in our last episode, actually. So basically, once you know what you're looking for, you start noticing things that fit the story. Like we talked about, we watch this scary movie late at night, you come home, you hear those same strange noises your house makes for years, and then you put that as in your house as being haunted now. So, confirmation bias right there. So, let's say you're at a gas station late one night, and a couple of kids walk up asking for directions. Maybe one of them has really dark eyes because of the lighting. Maybe they're a little awkward and nervous. If you already heard about the black eyed children, your brain might connect those dots even if nothing paranormal is happening. So, yeah, there is another example of that confirmation bias. And then there's the internet itself, which let's be honest here. The internet loves a good scary story. Am I right? Like, I love a good scary story, like Slender Man or The Backrooms, which was recently made into a movie, which I have not seen yet, by the way. I've had heard mixed feelings about it, so tell me what you think. The Reiki, all these great stories. And these stories spread because people keep retelling them and adding details and making artwork, filming videos, and creating an entire mythology around them. The Black Eyed Children fits the same pattern. Does that automatically mean they're fake? No, it doesn't. But it does show how easily a modern legend can spread around the world. So here's something else that's really interesting. Despite all the stories online, there has never been verified video footage that's convinced experts. No confirmed police investigations, no scientific evidence proving these children exist. Just eyewitness accounts. And eyewitnesses, even honest ones, can be mistaken. So where does that leave us? Honestly, it takes us right back to where we started. With a collection of stories, some people hear them and laugh, some people hear them and lock their doors, and some people hear them, then remember that one strange knock they got years ago. Now, whether these stories are folklore, misidentified encounters, or something we simply don't understand, the Black Eyed Children have earned their place as one of the most chilling urban legends of modern time. So, what do I think? Well, oh, I'll save that for the end. Okay, so I know you're dying to know what I think about this. Honestly, I don't know, but if you ask me to pick a side, I don't think these are just kids with weird eyes. Personally, I'm leaning more towards something supernatural or maybe even extraterrestrial, which I know. That sounds crazy, but even if one of these stories is true, I don't think there's a normal explanation for it. Now, the vampire theory, I actually think it's really fun. The whole asking for permission before coming inside the thing is almost identical to old vampire folklore. But I don't think we're talking about Dracula walking around in a hoodie asking for a ride home. It's more Hollywood vampire stuff. If there's any truth to this legend, I think it's something completely different. At the end of the day, none of us know. Maybe Brian Bethel had one really weird night. Maybe every story after that was just people building on the legend. Or maybe every once in a while, someone really does answer the door and comes face to face with something they can't explain. Either way, I can promise you one thing. If somebody knocks on my door at midnight and I see through my Ring camera app two kids with completely black eyes, y'all are gonna see me on the neighborhood Ring camera fucking driving the fuck out of there. 'Cause hell to the no. But now I want to know what you all think, the viewer. So, do you think the Black Eyed Children are just one of the best urban legends ever created? Or do you think they're supernatural, or aliens, or something else entirely? Let me know down in the YouTube comments, or if you're listening on Spotify, leave a comment there too. I seriously read them and love seeing what you all think. So, if you enjoyed today's episode, I'd really appreciate it if you'd subscribe, follow the podcast, leave a rating if your app lets you, and share it with someone who loves creepy stories as much as you do. As always, thank you so much for hanging out with me. So, stay safe, keep your porch light on, and maybe don't answer every knock at the door. I'll see you all in the next one.
Vamos at kapilitan tasi. Aslin ranos de mai. Ame.